This is Amy Chan from CakeDecoratingSchool.com, and if you like cake decorating, you're in the right place. Welcome to our flower series. In this video, we'll be making buttercream coneflowers. It's broken down into steps, so you can skip ahead, rewind, and rewatch as desired. Now, let's make the colors for our coneflowers. We're using American style buttercream. We're gonna make two colors, a nice kind of in-between pinky purple and a lovely, I don't know what I wanna call like a golden orange for the centers. So we're gonna start with the purple. I've got my American style buttercream in my bowl. I'm going to use the following liquid gel colors: neon bright pink, buckeye brown, sunset orange, faded label on that one, and finally some violet. And we're going to start with our violet and our neon bright pink. And I'm going to do 2 drops of my pink and 1 of my purple. So I want to make a nice in-between shade, and depending on exactly where you want to go, you can always go more purple than pink, or like we're doing more pink than purple. But I'm not making a ton, so I don't need a whole bunch of drops. Just need to get enough in there to really make like a nice medium kind of tone. I don't need it to be too dark. But I want it to be kind of vibrant and really a little bit eye-catching. And I want it to be able to hold up to the lovely orange we're gonna make for the centers. And these will be nice contrasting colors with the purple and that beautiful burnt orange for the center. So it should give us a nice contrast. And that's a lovely shade. It's kind of almost got a lilac vibe to it, and it's perfect for these flowers. Our next color is going to be kind of an in-between shade as well. It's going to be like, maybe describe it as kind of like a burnt orange. So I'm going to start with a nice drop of orange, and I'm going to add some brown to it. So I just want to get like a nice little small drop of brown in there. So we're looking to make a really warm kind of golden orange shade that feels not too, I don't know how to describe it. We want it to feel warm, and we want it to feel soft, and we want it to read well next to that purple without being too attention grabbing. So the orange can be kind of bright, and that brown will dull it out just a little bit, which is nice and give us a nice kind of natural tone for these centers. Let's see how that looks. It's looking nice. I think just a little more brown. And it'll give us kind of that kind of harvesty tone. It's also a good color for fall, besides being a great color for flower centers. So I'm going to start light on the brown because it can quickly overpower the orange. And I think this is going to be wonderful. Just needed to walk it a little more towards the brown. But you can see that gives us a nice, warm, kind of golden shade of brown. This is going to be beautiful. It has a lot of that orange in it, and it's going to be a nice contrast to the purple that we made for our petals. For this flower, we are going to use 2 12-inch disposable decorating bags. You can see my purple is fitted directly with my tip, and I'm using a coupler with that nice golden brown because I'm going to use 2 different tips. For our purple, we're using a 104 tip. So you can see a nice straight petal tip will do. For a golden brown, we're going to start out using a number 12 tip. And we'll also use a number 1. So anything nice and small. If you don't have a number 1, try a number 2. For techniques, we're going to use a couple simple ones for this coneflower. The first is a ring that we're going to pipe with our 104. Just because we've already got it on the bag, it's going to then be the same color as the petals, and we just need to make a little something for it to kind of stand up on and give it its nice characteristic shape for those petals where they're flopped over. So for this, we're just going to hold the bag upright so that the opening's kind of parallel to the surface. So it's not completely straight up. It'll lean just a little bit. And we're gonna squeeze just a little off center on our flower nail so that we squeeze and spin and pipe a nice ring. And we'll do 3 of those right on top of each other. So it's gonna build up a little bit of height for us. For our petals, this is actually going to be very similar to our ring. We are going to hold the opening so that it's parallel to the surface, which means the bag won't be completely straight up. It'll be angled just a little bit off, but the overall orientation of how we're squeezing is kind of straight up and down. We're going to use this in an uncharacteristic way, and we're going to squeeze and then pull towards the direction that the back of the bag is kind of pointing, because we're a little off of upright. And that's going to give us what I call tab petals, where you get this nice kind of skinny, rounded at the end little tab. And when we do this on our actual flower nail, for our flowers, the orientation is going to be a little different. And we'll talk about that because we're going to be piping on the side and over the top of the ring. So when we're piping, we're going to start kind of at the bottom, down by the base of the ring, and we're going to have this opening so it's kind of parallel to that surface, and we're going to glide it along as we pull those tabs. So we're going to use kind of a bit of a rocking, think almost rainbow motion with the back end of the bag, and you'll see that more when we actually do these on our flower nails. But just pipe some basic ones, just on a little parchment first to kind of get used to piping that shape. And then when you go to pipe it on those actual rings and on that surface, it'll be just a little bit easier to incorporate that rocking motion with the back of the bag. For our coneflowers, we're also going to do some dots, and I'm going to use the number 12 tips. So nice big dot. You want to be up off the surface, straight up and down, squeeze and let that frosting balloon out, and then stop and circle around. We want to give a nice surface that we can pipe our little kisses on. And finally, we're going to do some little kisses. So kisses are kind of the thing that most people end up doing when they're trying to make dots and are what we would normally consider a mistake. But in this case, we want those little points on the top of our dots because it adds the characteristic texture that the center of these flowers have. So think about it like giving a little squeeze, and then still squeezing while you pull away. And since we're using a number 1 tip, they're really tiny, but that's going to give us the texture that we want for these flowers because they'll all have those beautiful, there we go, little points on the top. We've gone over our techniques. Now let's review how we put them all together. So we're going to build our coneflower blossom. We're going to start out with our bag with our 104. We're going to leave some room in the center. So think about the center of your flower nail and just go slightly to the outside edge. We don't want to be all the way to the outside of the edge, just in between that distance. We're going to pipe 3 rings, one right on top of the other. And that's going to give us some nice height to that ring to allow us to pipe our petals on top of it. Once we get that ring in place, we're going to use that 104 tip, kind of just change up the orientation of the bag, and we're going to start with the fat end of the opening, basically making contact with the nail, lined up on the outside edge of that ring, kind of keep the opening of the bag parallel to it, and we're going to pipe those tabs. So we're just going to squeeze and pull along the ring and towards the center. It's totally fine if you still have a gap in the middle. A lot of times my petals will just end right kind of at the end of that ring, and that's perfect. We want to work all the way around. Doesn't really matter if you go clockwise or counterclockwise. Do whatever is comfortable for you and put those petals right next to each other. If there's a little bit of a gap showing through and you can still see your ring, that's perfectly fine, right? It's the same color as the petals, so your eye will just kind of fill that in and assume that it's more petals underneath. So we get them as close as we comfortably can, but don't worry about packing them in too tightly. If you see a little of the ring, that's why it's the same color. We'll go ahead and do a second layer. So get nice and tight with that first layer. The second layer, start kind of where that curve starts to change. So we'll go a little shorter and we'll go in between our petals. And we might skip a few in between. So think a little more sparse. We're just trying to add a little bit of texture, a little bit of dimension, some of the petals not being as long as others, and we'll go. So maybe every third space we'll do one, right? Go all the way around, get a nice little second ring of petals on there, and then we are going to change to our brown. So you're gonna end up with a void in the middle, perfectly fine, right? Take your brown and your number 12 tip, go down in there and just squeeze a nice dot. It's almost like a practice or warm-up dot for you. You can just go ahead and squeeze it down in there, and that should fill up that area. And then you can pipe a dot nice and on top. These flowers have really prominent centers, so you really want to get some height to that, and it's going to make them look really lovely, a little realistic, and really capture the feel. So get a nice dot on top, that second one with your 12 tip, and then we're going to cover it with our tiny little kisses. So we'll change out for our number 1 tip, start down at this bottom edge, and just think about working in concentric circles. So do little kisses all the way around, come up a little bit the side of that dot, start in between and do another row, and just keep going until you've completely covered that surface in little tiny kisses, and you'll end up with a beautiful, detailed, and realistic looking coneflower. We've got our flower nail out. I'm using my 2-inch nail. I've got it covered in a little piece of parchment, and when you get started, kind of line your bag up in the middle of the tip, in the middle of the nail, and then slide it over. So if you think about it, it's a 2-inch flower nail, so we want to go over about a 1/2 inch, and that should leave you a 1/2 inch border and should allow us to make a nice, approximately 1-inch round ring. And then we're just going to tilt the bag so that that opening is kind of parallel to the surface, and give it a nice squeeze. And you can see that gives us a little ring, and we're just going to pipe a second and a third. And if you need to, just clean off the tip in between. And you can see you can go either direction with the way that you're holding it. It doesn't really matter as long as we get a nice ring on there, and you can see it's got a little bit of height because we did those 3 layers. It also doesn't have to be perfectly round, so don't worry about that if it's not. Once we put those petals on there, it's going to give it a nice round shape. Once you have your ring on, we're going to start piping petals. I find it easiest, since I'm right-handed, to start over here on the left and pull towards the right side. But give it a try. You can always go the opposite direction, try up, try down. The exact positioning isn't important, just that it's comfortable for you and that the motion feels smooth. So we're going to start with the opening of the tip, down right at the flower nail, and just pipe those tabs. And you can see you're going to get little tails on them. That's just fine. And just go all the way around until you meet back at the beginning. And if you keep the tip just kind of in the same spot and you're always pulling towards the center, you'll have a nice flow to those petals where they feel like they're kind of all tracking towards the same central point. You can see I still have a void down in there. It's not huge, but we'll fill that up with a little buttercream from our 12 tip. And I'm not too concerned about the tails or how long they are. I'm going to go ahead and start a second layer. So think about where the kind of slope of this line starts to change, right? We go from going kind of at a side angle to being almost flat across the top. So right where that change starts for the flat, that's where I want to just put in a few little petals. So maybe like every third petal, so that there's just some nice volume there. Some of them are a little shorter, some of them are a little longer. It's time to start working on our center. We've got our bag of our golden brown fitted with our number 12 tip, and I just want to squeeze it down in the middle and make a first little dot. And you can see that's kind of sunken in and we don't really see it. That's really just to fill up that void that's there and kind of connect everything together. Now we're set up so that we can go right on top of that. So think above the surface of the dot we just made, we're going to pipe another dot and really work on these. Let that line connect, balloon out, and get nice and big, and try and give yourself a beautiful top there. So nice, beautiful, no Hershey kisses on top for this. To finish it off, we're gonna cover this dot in kisses. So I'm just gonna pick a spot to start and just start piping. And since I'm starting on the side, you'll notice I've got the back end of the bag kind of pointing towards the side. This allows me to get in there and pull those little kisses out. And as we work up the side, I'll change the orientation of the back end of the bag. And if you have any that don't connect or miss, just pull them right off. And just rotate your tip as you go. So that you're always kind of working right in the same spot. And we'll just move the bag kind of up this cone as we work around. So we can get back to the beginning, just go up a little, right on top. And what we're looking to do is adding a nice kind of texture of little dots covered with little points, so we get that nice little kind of fluffy, pointy texture to it, because it's kind of all actually little individual filaments, but they're just packed really tightly together so that they look like a ball. Oh. So as I go and I work, I'm just going to change the orientation of the bag so it was off to the side while I'm working on the side, and then it's pointing straight up when I'm working on the top. And that means that I'm always kind of perpendicular to the surface. So as we change, we change the angle of the tip. And you can see that gives us a lovely little texture there on the center and gives us a nice, more realistic feel to our flower. And there we have wonderful, beautiful, vibrant cone flowers. These are great for summertime. They're simple. A lot of places they almost grow like wildflowers, and they're just nice, beautiful, vibrant touch to your creations. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to try some other flowers, perhaps try checking out our daisy for a nice simple one if this was a little too advanced for you. Or if you feel like you want more of a challenge, try our lovely video on buttercream dahlias. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like more about the cake decorating materials and equipment we use, or just some inspirational videos about cake decorating itself, you can follow us on Insta or YouTube at Cake Decorating School. If you'd like to know more about yearly membership and what it entails, you can go to www.cakedecoratingschool.com for more information. And if you're interested in these products, you can check the links in the description.